Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the call. Well, that shook off some of the comments for us. All right. Hello, welcome to the joint meeting of the Willington Board of Education, our Board of Selectmen, our Board of Finance, and the Capital Improvement Planning Committee. It is Thursday, September 4th, 2025, and we are calling this meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. Before we begin, I would just like to check in with the select chairs of our group just to see if we have quorum this evening.
I do.
Yes. Okay, and Chair Lawler, do you have a quorum this evening?
Yep.
You do, great. And Chair Marshall? Oh, that's a good question.
Melissa McKinnon is online. Who else is before? Steph Summers is online.
That's a yes. Wonderful.
She's supposed to be.
We do it.
She's here.
Oh,
She's in the hallway.
Wonderful. All right, good job. Got everything. Okay, the Board of Education welcomes and thanks the citizens as well as members of the Board of Finance and the CIP committee for attending this evening. It is the hope of the Board of Education members and Superintendent Stevens that we can all collaborate to address the needs of our two school buildings in a way that is best for the future of Willington. At this time, we'd like to invite everyone to join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would like, the flag is
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
over. The Board of Education is making every effort to offer opportunities for community engagement. That is our priority. With that said, we will proceed to present to speak. You have 5 minutes to share your thoughts and feelings. Please state your name and address at the beginning for the record. If you're here in person, you can go ahead and raise your hand. If you're online, you may do so virtually. Let's go ahead and start in the room. Did anyone want to say? Yes, sir.
Oh, 16 Meadow Lane. Just had a question. The notice was published today. I want to talk about this meeting. Never saw anything else on the town website or anything else on this before. Very disappointed.
Thank you. Glad you could make it. Anyone else in the room? All right. Do we have anything? Oh, go ahead, sir.
So Nicholas Sella, Myrtle Road, Willington. Just to piggyback on that, I was talking to another member in resident in town. I knew of notice, but I heard the same thing. He didn't know, his wife didn't know, his neighbors didn't even know. I saw a notice, but that is out there, just so you know. Just my 2 cents to give. I try to keep it under 90 seconds, so we'll see. So I want to raise a concern about the carrying costs for future plans need to be clear, especially with Hall School. Hall already has major repair needs, and I can't imagine the foundation accepting the building back unless it's at least halfway fixed. What would the cost and legal fallout be when looking at both of those schools? We also need to ask what happens to the new school. What happens if a new school is built and we move away from Hall entirely? If Hall then becomes a private school, I don't know if it will or not, but we have to recognize this region has a significant homeschooling community, and many families already choose private schools because they feel the public schools are failing them. If Hall goes private, that could shift even more kids out of the public system, especially since the option would now be right here in town. Doesn't that risk reducing the state funding the town relies on? I believe it's per population of the students. I don't know, maybe somebody could correct me. Has that possibility, and if so, what's the answers? We can't ignore the last school project. There was conflict with the land committee selecting land, that person getting selected as a selectman later on. So beyond that conflict, the bigger issue though, that the public never really knew was the full cost picture, right? The numbers were narrowly focused on the project itself, not the added costs tied to center and hall. Will the new committee, when it's put together, ensure that no ethical concerns also arise like we had seen in the previous proposal? So my question is simple, are we being given the entire cost picture this time? And when will the public see those answers before being asked to commit? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? Yes, sir.
Adam Zelonis, 119 River Road. I just wanted to talk to you some design. I'm an engineer, and some of the design decisions made by the consulting engineering firm and the committees for building design. There's a tendency for consulting firms to apply commercial building standards practices to municipal buildings. A lot of times this is not appropriate. We have the Willington Fire Station is one example, and you have another example is the library. Very different designs. One has much more life, and that's the library, versus the South Willington Fire Station. A lot of the repairs we have in this list here, that's not a fault of, like the new school, old school. That's maintenance that happens. It depends on how you design the facility, what decisions you made to do that. And if you make decisions that are 20-year life, you're going to have a building that's falling apart in 20 years. You shouldn't design stuff like that. That's not appropriate for municipal applications. So just want to leave that up. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in this? Okay, let's take a look on mine. Great. We will have another opportunity for presidents to speak at the bottom of the agenda. Thank you. Okay, how did we get here and why are we talking about this now? I think that's a question on some people's minds. Here are some historical facts for you. Center Elementary School was built in 1953. Paul Memorial School came to be in 1922. The most recent renovation on each was in 1995, and the purpose of that was to have the buildings become ADA compliant. They no longer are. A facility study was done in 1987, which led to a 1992 school building committee, which recommended the purchase of land for future new school construction, which was purchased, but the land may no longer be viable, as was determined by the last SBC, which was formed in 2020. In 2023, the school building committee's work developed into a referendum to build new on a new site. That referendum failed. In November of 2023, the school building committee submitted a comprehensive report to the select committee that is still available online if you would like to reference it. Our goal is to work together as community members to decide what to do next. There are hardships for many of us at this time, and we have buildings and facilities that need care across the board here in Willington. We know our school buildings need a lot of work and will continue to age and thus need more help. We know that operational costs as listed on our annual budget will decrease if we have one pre-K through 8 building. And we have a state representative and a selectman on our side. Our state representative here is investigating our situation and finding ways to help small towns with decreasing enrollment like ours. And she has big, wonderful news to share with us tonight. She tirelessly advocated for and drafted legislation to increase Willington's reimbursement rate for school building projects to a whopping 79.64%, which will expire on June 30th of 2027. You can see why the Board of Education thinks that now is the time to revisit this topic, and it's a great time to reignite the discussion and take action. Speaking of our special guests, I'd now like to introduce Senator Jeff Gordon and State Representative Tammy Nuccio, who have shown interest in and demonstrated support for school building improvement in Willington. Thank you both for all of your work and for recognizing that though Willington is small, it is our home and important to us. Now I'd like to turn it over to you, Representative Nuccio, to explain more about the new legislation that you've worked on so well. And thanks for bringing that to us tonight.
No problem. Thank you guys for having me, and thank you for the opportunity for Jeff and I to come and talk about the legislation that we got passed. To kind of give a little bit of history, as we just went through, I know when Willington went through the last budget referendum for the school, you know, I'm not a citizen of resident. I'm a citizen of Willington. I don't vote on your budgets. I don't vote on your school things and that. But what I saw online was a whole lot of consternation about, you know, as Mr. Tellis said, what's the reimbursement rate going to be? Where is this school going to be if there is one? What is the plan? And there was just a lot of uncertainty in town. At that point, neither Jeff nor I were asked to be part of that process. And It's not our place to stick our nose in where we're not asked to be, and town matters. We are your state representatives. After that referendum failed, I think it was a very strong showing of the town that they just weren't comfortable with what was presented and how everybody got to where they were. After that point, I was approached, I believe Jeff was too, by the first selectwoman and the superintendent first to kind of talk about their frustration with not having a solid reimbursement rate or a plan from the state. After that, we continued working with First Selectman Peter Tanaka and the superintendent and members of the Board of Ed. I got people to come down here and see the schools. I got, the members of the education committee to come down here and see the schools. We had, I don't even know how many meetings we had, between, Phil, Peter, myself, and DSS, not DSS, DAS, and the Department of Education, going over the plans, the project goals that Willington had put together with the consultant firm to look at the options that Willington had. We talked about so many different things. We got confirmation based on these plans that were put out, which had three options. One was adding on a wing to Hall here to bring the elementary kids here. The other was a new school at a new location. And then there was a third option for repairs. I'm going to be upfront and honest. The third option is not anything that I can help with, that Jeff can help with, or that the state will help with. They will not finance regular maintenance on buildings. But we did get them to review the plans for a new building and a new location and adding on to Hall. And there's a couple of things that I think are of note here. One being that it would cost more money to add a wing onto this building than it would to build a new one. And that's because, this was all very clearly explained to all of us. When you build a wing onto this building, you have to bring this building up to code. That's going to be a lot of work. This is an old building, as the chairwoman mentioned, you guys did like ADA stuff. There's a lot of stuff in here when we were going through and touring the schools that are just not new code. So that benefits Willington in a sense. Because it costs more money to add a wing onto here, if we were to build a new school, it would bump our reimbursement automatically because it costs less to build new than it does to add on. So that gives us a 10-point bump immediately off of the 54.54% that typically would be reimbursed for a new school. There were a couple of things that were in motion, including preschools and a bunch of other things. But the goal for us, when we sat down and talked about this, was to get a locked-in rate. So that, from our perspective, took away the number one piece of consternation that the town had. Nobody knew exactly how much it was going to cost the town to do this, build or add on. Nobody, that rate couldn't be determined because you had to have an approved project first and then the state would tell you. So what we did is had a lot of conversations about putting the cart in front of the horse, right? I wanted to flip it. I want this locked in reimbursement rate before we had a project. And there was another piece of key legislation that I wanted in there, and that was to give Willington an extended period of time to determine which project they wanted to do. So again, we were really taking the entire process as it stands right now and turning it on its head. Typically, you have to have a project, you have to have a timeline, you have to secure your funding from the state, from the town, and then the state comes in and says, we're gonna give you 50% and the rest of it will be on your dime, right? We flipped the whole thing. We said, okay, based off of these plans, based off of how much it would cost to add a wing on to Hall and how much it would cost to build a new school, and if we took in all of these other little levers of preschool and everything else, that got me to 79.64%. And I said, okay, I want that guaranteed. I want to know that we're getting 79.64% minimum, period, that. And then the next thing I want is after I have that total number, then I want the town to be able to figure out which project they want to do. So that same 79.64 is applicable to whether or not we add a wing here onto Hall or we build a new school. It is not for the repairs. That is out of the question. It's out of the picture, right? That is something totally different. This is for the option of adding on a wing or building a new school. So now we have the guaranteed rate. We know that. We have until June of 2027 to secure our funding, have an approved project and secure our funding, which means go to referendum. Right, have the town decide which, if any, project they want to do. They have until June of 2027. There is a little fly in that ointment that Phil and Art brought to my attention, and it's not legislation, it's a policy change that they're making, and I think the reason that they're really pushing it right now is because there's been a lot of tinkering with reimbursement rates, and the state is looking at setting a square footage amount for a project. That goes into effect, I believe, July of 2026. So preferably, we would have an approved project and have a referendum before July of 2026. So if those square footage rates are wonky compared to what we have, our project would be approved prior to that implementation. Still trying to figure out all the ins and outs of that. But the main thing here was really for us to give you the option, right? If Willington decides to go forward with a new school construction, whether it be adding on a wing or building a school, the town can now rest comfortably knowing that they're gonna have at least the 79.64% reimbursement. And they have time to pick the project and do all of that and lock it in with more comfort, knowing what the town would be expecting. Now, I do want to say, I mentioned this at the Board of Ed meeting, the language that was written is a little wonky. I've talked to a couple of people in here about it and all of that, but the key here is we may have another bite at the apple. I'm the ranking member of appropriations. All school construction comes before appropriations and gets final approval. And in the past, when we've had towns that have had financial difficulties or high rates of poverty or a lot of school repairs, we can ask for higher reimbursement, right? And if I can get enough people, you're not on that committee, not on there for that, but it's the school board, the thing that comes before. If I can get enough people in that room to agree, we might have the ability to get a higher reimbursement rate, but we can't count on that. And I don't want the town to have that as an area of consternation. I think the key thing here is we can count on the 79.64%. We have an opportunity at a later date for me to push in that meeting to get us a higher rate, but we can't promise that, we can't guarantee it. And I don't want it to be something that comes into the conversation of, well, we're not going to do anything until we know that, because you can't, I can't change that. I have to have an approved school project. I have to have everything in at that point. That's when they come down and say, okay, here's the exact amount of money, here's the reimbursement rate. At that point in that meeting, we may be able to get more, but we can't promise it. So I really don't want any of the conversation to be, Willington can get more, we can get more, we can get more. The other kind of flip side to this is because we have until June of 2027 to do this, that means until June of 2027, if we don't have an approved project, and they can change this legislation, right? So I don't want that to happen. I want us to keep the 79.64 as our goal right now, as a conversation starter. And then, like I said, maybe after an approved project, we get something special on our stocking. Never know, maybe, possibly. So the other thing is one of the approved projects that I think the Board of Ed was looking at was actually putting a new school on this footprint. That project was actually cheaper than the project we brought forward for DAS and SDE to look at, because it didn't have land at all yet. If we were to move forward even with that one, I think the estimate was it like 53 million or something? If the original, I think, was like 60-something million for a new school. So if we were to move forward with the smaller footprint here on this piece of land, that would be even less for the town. Basically, we'd be looking at a guarantee the town would have to cover 20%. with the possible opportunity, maybe less later, but I promise that. So the key here is in order for this all to really flow seamlessly, we can't really mess with the add a wing on the block, because that's our high point, right? That's the high point, and that shows how much it would cost to add on here and how that's so cost prohibitive. Then for a new school to come in cheaper, we're sailing. We're sailing with the 79.64%. And again, possibility later. Now, my suggestion, when I talked to Board of Ed, I talked to Phil, I talked to Peter, I talked to the first selectman, I've talked to other people, is I really feel the best way, in my opinion, for Willington to move forward with this is basically when you go to referendum to have the first question be, shall Willington go forward with a school project, yes or no? If you vote yes, which project do you want? Because I think it's important for the people of Willington to have their voice heard in which project they think is best for the town. Rather than somebody else deciding one project and people who don't want it fighting specifically against it. You know, I think the more transparent, more openness that we have with this, the more involvement we get from our residents to buy into what we want our school and educational opportunities to be for our kids going forward. If anybody has any questions, I'm sure Jeff has stuff to say too, but I just wanted you to know the history of it. I wanted you to know where we are. I wanted to level set that I think we should all just move forward with the 79.54, hopes of Christmas morning some other time, and really just look at what we have here for these two options, and then how we can help you guys after Willington decides, do you want a project? And if you do, which one do you want? Then we're here to help with any of the other stuff that may come along.
Mr. Gordon, did you have anything you wanted to add at this time?
Sure, yes, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. You know, Tammy's laid out history of everything, what went on with regards to the, and I'm happy to tag team and work with you, Tammy, on this. You know, suffice to say, these are not easy lists. Until literally the legislature ends, if you can actually get it. For example, I had a big bill that passed 2 minutes to go before the legislature. So you never know. But what Tammy also mentioned is we also want to make certain that while this gives you time to think about through whatever new process, whatever you guys decide for your community and for the education of your kids, our role right now is, number one, let you decide. I'm not here to tell you which project to do, but to know that there is the increased reimbursement opportunity, but it's not forever. But also, and we know, Tammy and I know this very well, you get something, but you always have to protect it, because there can always be something magically that happens that it gets changed. You never know. So that's part of what we do behind the scenes, you know, as well. Once you decide what you want as a community relative to whatever decision-making points any of the voters decide on their own in an informed way, then once that's to be moved forward after a referendum with this number that's there, which is a high reimbursement when you really look at it compared to what a lot of others get, even when you look at increased reimbursement for a lot of towns that got into the big bill, this is pretty high compared to what others got. Want to make certain then that we can, with the agencies moving forward. It's good to have this number. I think it does set a good stage for decision making, but again, whatever you guys decide you wish to do, I'm happy to do it. I tend to be of help at the state level, working with Tammy as well, and then seeing where we go from there. But as Tammy mentioned, this is good to have up front, as opposed to the usual process where the numbers are somewhat nebulous once you've approved the project, so to speak. So this does, I believe, give you some breathing room to be able to, you know, make the decision. One thing that I'll also mention is, you know, what Tammy mentioned about what might happen next year with what the state may do with its change. Likely the state will do something as it finalizes. That can have impact. That doesn't mean you need to scramble and get something decided in a year. But just be aware that there's other moving parts at the state level that may or may not affect what happens with reimbursement. We don't always have control over that, but certainly that's something that will be watched to see if it were to adversely affect something for Willington, then we could see what we can do to try to be of help. But at least, this gives, I think, some helpful starting point as far as what the state is willing to do as you guys then move forward to decide. So again, I'm always happy to hear from people, but as I remind many people who reach out to me, I don't vote in this town, but you guys do. So certainly, continue to be informed, but know that this is here as a base right now. It's a very good base to start from. As you want to start to calculate and make sense of numbers for different projects. So again, happy to work with Tammy on it. I appreciate her lifting, and certainly being ranking on appropriations helps. So I just get to be a member of it, all the different subcommittees. But with that said, this is a good starting point. I'm always happy to hear from people, but right now I can tell you there isn't anything further we're going to do at the state level because we're not in session. I've also had people ask me, well, when you go into special session, is that what we do? Which might be October at this point, so I just want you to stay tuned for that. It's going to be a very interesting special session, I'm told. This is not something that comes up at the special session. There's going to be other big picture items that are going to come up and other bills, including some education bill, but it's not a bill that's going to look at something this granular what each town gets for increased reimbursement. Who knows what might happen next session, but I have been answering a lot of emails from people. Hey, can we get more in a special session? No, that's not what the leadership is looking for bills for a special session. We hope they're not going to pull back on this, but we won't get a special session. We'll be focused on other things, education wise. Always happy to be of help. Feel free to reach out anytime. Always happy to be here.
Thanks, Senator. I like what you said about setting a good stage for decision making. That's something we're really trying to do right now. So that was a good way to put that. Thanks. All right, I wanted to take an opportunity to introduce and thank Mr. Rusty Malik and his associate Mike Lane from QA+M for being here tonight and being on hand to answer questions. Some of them you certainly could answer better than most here at this group. We will now open the floor to invited board and committee members to comment and ask questions. It would be really helpful if you could please introduce yourself so that we could have that data for the sake of the recording. After that, we will be hearing from the public, so get your questions ready. Is anyone interested? Yes, Mr. Dressel.
Yes, Walter Garcelle with finance. I have a question concerning the reimbursement rate of 79.6. If we're to put an addition on all, we have 79.54% applying in the code upgrades on the rest of the building.
It's the whole project.
Okay.
It would be the whole project.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Marshall.
Jim Marshall, I'm the chair of the CIP committee. As we start, I thank you both for your efforts on this. I'm going to have to read this.
Jim, a little louder.
This
Guys,
is
right
like
next to you, we need it. Just press the button on the bottom once. Or that gray button on the side. Right. There you go.
All right. How's this? Any better?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, guys. Jim Marshall, I'm the chair of the CIP committee here. I want to start by saying thank you to both of you for your efforts on this. And just to form a comparison, really kind of drive home how tremendous this is, an advantage to Willington. An advantage to Willington compared to where we were 3 years ago. The referendum that failed, we learned a lot from that process. But that was a $36 million cost to town at a projected 40% reimbursement rate. And almost 80% reimbursement is game changing for anything we do moving forward. And quite frankly, from a CIP perspective, these two school buildings, what to do with them, have been a weight and will continue to be a weight on future planning of this community, for this community for decades to come. So coming to a successful resolution on a school project here is really meaningful for the long-term fiscal viability, at least from across all the boards. So there's a lot that is going to happen over the next few months, lots of discussions that need to happen internally. But it is, as Jeff said, a really good starting point, and it's an opportunity we really should do our best, particularly everybody here around this table, to capitalize on that, because it's going to have the most significant impact on taxpayer liability, taxpayer. It's just going to have a significant impact. I can't put a finer point on it. So again, thank you, everybody, and I look forward to everybody working together and this really being a time that Willington can come together and shine. So.
Yeah, so Matt Clark, I'm a selectman, I live on Willington Road. You hear me okay? Oh, perfect. Very good. Well, and Matt Clark, Willington Road. So I want to make 3 points about the process moving forward. I think we need to have a clear goal here for this project, if it does pass. I think developing a proposal that, or not a plan that meets the needs of the people of Willington is important. I think having a clear goal is important, and I think matching the scope to our ability to pay is important as well. The goal here, I think, should be to save money. Yes, we're going to have great education. Bricks don't really teach children. Teachers teach children, but I think we have to have a clear, and that goal should be to lower our costs. We used to be a population of 600 students in the early 1990s, or late 1990s. Now we're down to 350, I guess. Bill, is that right? 370. So logically, operating 2 schools for 370 gets to be a little bit tenuous. Also, and that trend is going to continue in this direction. So I guess Florida, I attended most of the meetings of the original school building committee from 2023. I've attended about 3/4 of them. I remember an estimate of about $500,000 in savings. Is that right? $500,000 in savings for consolidating 2 schools. That does not include the cost of building a building, remodeling a building. It's just the operational cost by putting them together. The second point I'd like to make is I think we need to have a bipartisan process as well. I think that's the most important thing. And we need to have a plan that the taxpayers will support. That last referendum failed substantially. Moving forward, I think we need to have a bipartisan process. We need to listen better. I know it's frustrating. I get it. How do you listen more when people won't talk? We've got to figure out how to do that. We've got to do a better job. And then, I talked with Pete earlier, and we were talking about using the process that they use in town to appoint the school building, which would be a bipartisan process as well. I want to say something about that or not. But the last thing is, the next school building proposal we need to take to voters, should match our ability to pay. The overriding concern here should be proposing a plan that will pass. Lastly, when considering tonight's presentation, we need to keep in mind that we have 2 large capital needs. We have emergency services, the firehouse, the fire station, and we have this. It's not just this. There's some things to keep in mind, sort of kind of a rubric to look at moving forward, and the best way to accomplish this. Okay.
Thank you for throwing under the bus.
I didn't mean to do that.
I am always willing to be corrected. So it was my impression at the last school building committee that it started out with appointments from Board of Selectmen. So what I would like to do is I'd like to canvass the town, ask for volunteers to sit on this board. We need to keep the board small and moving. We have a time constraint here, which I have watched projects in this town move along, and we need to do considerably better and faster. So my general idea is to ask for volunteers from the town and to have those board members selected by a bipartisan committee. My initial idea is the 2 selectmen and the director of public works. That way we get both parties and construction experience into our decision making and to move quickly.
Thank you for keeping that July 26th date in mind. That is important.
You have a board member of finance speak.
Oh. Noticing that.
Yep. Don't ask for God, Melissa Miller, you should be live.
Oh, hi, Melissa, I'm sorry.
I'm not very good with technology sometimes.
Where
Hi,
is
I'm
it?
Taylor. I'm at 55 Mahalia. I'm an alternate on the Board of Finance. But I'm just gonna say a couple of things. I want to thank everybody for coming out and participating. This is what we need, as many people as possible. So we do get that bipartisan decision, because this affects the whole town. So we need to communicate great together. And I want to thank Tammy and Jeff for all the hard work that they've done. Now it's our time to get going and do the hard work so we can meet these deadlines. Just a couple of thoughts that I had going forward once we have a committee. One of the things that I was thinking of is that will Hall School be part of the conversation? I know they didn't really have a whole lot to say last time, but part of it is I want to make sure that they are part of the discussion, because if we do decide to go with a new school, we still have a responsibility to fix their building, at least when we give it back to them. The other part is do with Center School. I mean, it is still a town building that it's in disrepair. So if we build new, what are we going to, what is the plan going forward? I know we really want to get a new school, but we also need to realize that we haven't taken care of what we already have. So it's just kind of one of those things that I just want to put out there, just to kind of say, as we're going forward, especially if we are going to go with a new school, what we will do to make sure we make Hall School Foundation whole before we give them back. I also have a question for Tammy and Jeff. The funding of the state funding, is there any strings attached to that where our schools are going to be required to pay for pre-K? There was some kind of rumors going around, and I just want to make sure that that I kibosh any rumors that are going on about pre-K. If that's something that's going to be a contingent on getting the money, that taxpayers would have to fund that. And that's it. Thank you.
Thanks.
So technically, you guys already have pre-K, right? You already have pre-K classes. There are no strings to that, because when you rebuild, you're gonna rebuild pre-K classes. If there is the appetite for it, it's a good opportunity to expand that as part of your build. But I don't know, like, where all your ed specs and everything else are in that. So there are no strings to this 79.64%. That is the rate that we came up with by looking at everything. It was in my original legislation, and it was the legislative intent. So I don't think there's anything special with that. But if I could, I would like to address what Mr. Teller had said and what what we've heard now, whether it be Hall School or Center. I'm from Holland, you know, we had our school board there. I talked to Mr. Tanaka about like how we did the school board thing. I'm glad that you guys are gonna use that because it really promotes community engagement. It's community members, it's not a bunch of elected officials sitting down and fighting about it. It's what the community wants. But one of the things that we did, which I don't think this gets linked to your school project, but whatever, if you guys decide on a new building and you now have Hall and Center available, in Tolland, we had, when we consolidated, we had the school left, we had Parker Memorial. We worked with the state and they built elderly housing out of it. They turned it into 37 fixed income, affordable housing for elderly, for the elderly community, right? They did all the repairs on the building. They took it as it was. The state invested the money, but they got a grant and that, and they created this housing opportunity. The other thing is I just toured a couple weeks ago. I just toured a school, a special ed school for autism, Attlebrook in Manchester. And they were telling me how much they're looking to try to find a place to expand in the northeastern corner. They would come in, like if you look at places like this, I think there are opportunities that the town can pursue, but I don't think they're connected. I don't think you can have them be connected, right? I think there's a lot of demand for special education and not enough areas to do it. So whether it be senior housing or special education, you know, I think there would be opportunities for you to find a way to use at least Center for one of these things. And you know, me, I'm like always thinking 5 steps ahead. You know, if I were to get a school in here for special needs, I would say, okay, you don't have to pay me taxes, but you have to guarantee take 6 students from Willington, right? You have to give Willington preferential treatment, 1 kid in each grade or something like that. Something that would help to offset the special ed cost that you have without it being a cost to the town, right? So I think in town, what we ended up doing is we ended up waiving them paying taxes on the building, and they have to pay like a certain amount per unit based off of the income, right? It's a significantly smaller amount than if they had paid property tax on it, but it opened up 37 units of elderly affordable housing units in town. So I don't want you to kind of think that the schools are out trust, you know, like a weight running that. Could be, but I think there are opportunities out there that we'd be happy to help try to facilitate and push, help with you trying to identify something where you could probably use those buildings for something else that's beneficial to the town in the long run. So I just wanted to put that out there that I think, you know, there's opportunities to be had with heavy involvement from the town to try to kind of sell that.
Just chime in real quick.
Certainly.
Bill Stevens, superintendent. So, yes, she's 100% right on the outplacement locations in the Northeast are slim to none. They're very hard to find. We often shift students west. And so that's something that there's a lot of districts that are looking for that. And then the second point I wanted to make, talking about preschool, the board is working on educational specifications. They're reviewing what was approved previously. There's a checklist in the back of the room. It's going to be online for people to fill out as a Google form. And one of the questions is, is the town looking to have a preschool space for both 3 and 4-year-olds? Currently, we have a 4-year-old program because of space. 3-year-olds are kind of on a waiting list or just needs only. And so that's a priority. The board wants to know that because that would be an additional space that would allow you to have 3 and 4-year-olds.
Bruce Lawler, 48 River Road, Chairman of the Board of Finance. Tim, I have a question for you. So state statute, section 142, subsection 8, in regards to a pre-K, states early childhood care from birth to 5 years. So would we have to have that or?
No, so I think that's early start, right? Is that so that's not necessarily, like, that's a totally different program. than the preschool in the school, right? That's early start, that's funded through a bunch of different things, and it's really kind of, helping children who are showing developmental delays, I wanna say, at an early age, and a lot of that gets done at home, you know, they have like PT, they have speech therapy, they have all different kinds of stuff like that, so I don't think that's part of. And by the way, you keep throwing CGS numbers at me, and unless somebody gives me a computer, I'm gonna just tell me what they are.
It's birth. And so when they turn 3 years old, that's where the local district has some level of responsibility when there's special education needs. That's where it turns over to us. So we might only provide services that are connected to special education services because birth to 3 services are done at that point.
I would agree with Phil. I would think that what you would want to focus on is the 3 and 4. And then, you know, those kids who have that 5-year-old birthday that like is the limbo land now, if you're not 5 by September. I would think that's where you guys would want to focus. I wouldn't think you want to look for expansion for the. My own personal opinion. Again, I don't vote on it. I'm not here. That's just my.
Hello. Thank you so much, you guys, for coming. It's wonderful to hear perspectives outside of town. I just wanted to say thank you to all the boards that came tonight. I feel like oftentimes it feels like we're working in a vacuum. No matter what board we're sitting on, we're working, it feels like sometimes in a vacuum. So it's good to see everybody around this table invested in what's happening next and hearing from people and hearing from our legislators. So as a Board of Ed member, as well as a taxpaying member of Willington, the consolidation of these 2 schools, in my opinion, is super important. The narrative is that schools are expensive. There's a list of projects that you guys have in front of you that is not comprehensive by any stretch and is never ending. So if we can do something with this incredible reimbursement rate to address that issue, consolidate staffing, facilities, overhead, to me, it's lightning in a bottle at this point. So I'm hoping that we can all figure out a way, as Selectman Clark was talking about, in a bipartisan fashion, figure out a way forward and make it happen.
Thanks, Jen. Anyone else?
Silver Springs.
Oh, you want to double?
Yeah, great.
Oh, hold on. Mr. Kusekis first. Go ahead.
No matter what the reimbursement rate is.
I can hear you. Use your cheerleading voice like I do.
But no matter what the reimbursement rate comes out to be, whatever the total rough cost of the project, in terms of financing. We finance the full amount, and then we get reimbursement after.
No.
How does that?
So I can tell you how it worked in Holland. This is how I understand the process to work. You go to referendum for the full amount, right? But you're not actually taking out that bond at that point. You'll take out notes, right? But you don't have to take out the notes until you actually start incurring all the costs. And at that point, the note is different. You'll get the reimbursement from the state as you go. So the reimbursement will come to you, and what will be left is your portion of it. So the town has to take on the commitment of, say it's $53 million. It's a $53 million project. The state is telling you they're going to reimburse you 80%, I'm rounding, 80% of it, right? So you're on the hook for $10 million. You would take out the notes. It's like I don't remember the exact name for it. God, my old like finance director.
Bond anticipation.
The bond anticipation note. You would take that out, and then the state pays the town their, and And that would, you would never end up taking out the actual bond for the whole amount. You pay it. And you'd have the bands left of the band, and you convert it into the $1 million that the town had. It's a whole lot of promise to appears. You know? Yeah, but your finance director should be able to kind of help with that. So, it's all really pretty contingent. The actual money is taken out after, as you need to pay for it.
So it's not a $3 million.
In the end, it'll be a 10
Using
million.
your rough.
Correct. Using the rough numbers, if that was the one you went with, blah, 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 you know, it would end up, in the end, your bond would be the $10 million and that's it. Does that make sense?
This number, 53 that doesn't include the land.
That one was here. That 53 million project in this, the last packet, was building the school on this level.
This is something all foundational, a lot of level, this school.
That's not my monkey. That's not my monkey. You know, that's something that, you know, our town would work out with Paul and all those conversations. We just got the rate. The rest of it is on you guys. You should apply for the school.
Mrs. Bergeron?
A couple things. One thing about Hall, remembering from last time, we really don't have enough land here to build what is recommended for a K-8 school. That's just one thing to keep in mind. The other thing is, and this is for, if someone at CIP wants to explain this, knowing that part of our problem last time was that there's a really big bump at the beginning of the bond, that would be very hard. It would raise taxes right away very hard, and gradually over time it would come down. We've been putting money away so that we can alleviate that bump a little bit. Anybody at CIP explain that to us, Jim? Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, so obviously, when you take out any bond amount, and I'll preface all of this, well, I think even the numbers in the most recent presentation are preliminary because the Board of Ed is working on their ed specs. The required building square foot need is going to change, and that will impact the numbers. That is something I know they're working on over the next couple of months. But in a bond, the repayment schedule in a bond, the highest cost to town, or the highest repayment, is in year one. The Board of Ed over the past few years has built up a $3 million reserve fund for a school project. That can be utilized, and it'll be a part of the discussions, to offset some of the higher front year costs when a bond hits, to reduce that demand and make it more tolerable from a budgetary perspective. That is one option. There are other, that'll all be a part of the further elaboration, further discussion. Everybody here at the table has, with the business office, or finance, to figure out what the most cost-effective way of managing and structuring the repayment or the funding of a larger project is. With that question out of the way, I'm just gonna not turn off the mic and on the mic again. There is a good point, or I think it's important to note, there are a couple of additional points that go into the whole school discussion. First and foremost is, this needs to well serve the student population, and cost being an important factor that I know the Board of Ed is being very cognizant of. Ultimately, they need to develop something that is in the best interest of both the community and the instructional environment for our students. There are potential drawbacks, potential concerns and considerations for any major renovation project at Hall School. That's not to say they're not achievable, they're not insurmountable, but the reality is they will have an impact. A major renovation, a complete renovation of a project with an addition, is going to impact the educational environment. And these will be students that have already gone through COVID, that have already been impacted for years by COVID. That's not to say it's not manageable. It is, it can be, but it will have an impact. Same thing, there are other concerns from a CIP perspective and from prior school building committee experience. If hall is not used, if the building itself is not used as a school, I don't know what that does from a deed perspective. These are all factors that should be entertained as a part of, you know, our community engagement and community discussion. But also there are complications that make it harder for the community to understand. If we can do whatever we can, everybody here around this table, to streamline those options to the greatest extent possible while still affording community input, it is advantageous for an efficient process moving forward. And one final note related to the school building committee and potential makeup. The reality is that committee, if we're looking at June 2026 as a referendum deadline to capitalize on the best reimbursement, best cost perspective for the town, that is a very limited window. The role of the school building committee, given the time it takes for this community to get things set up, it will largely be administrative in onboarding the process and coming to terms with the history of relevant information we've developed through the last school building committee and through the Board of Ed's work in the past year or two. The reality is that the school building committee will be responsible for the following 4 years or so of managing and administrating a major construction project for the town. And there is a value that can't be overlooked to having relevant experience as a priority on that committee as you're looking. I would encourage that only because I've seen there's a wide spectrum of community input at this table. There's going to be a wide spectrum of community members in the room, all with varying voices. And no matter who you pick, if they're experienced, they're also going to have their own opinions and political spectrums and what have you. But the experience is a critical need because it's really, that committee is going to be responsible for managing cost effectively a project for the town for a number of years. And it really needs to be, in my opinion, it really needs to be staffed with or appointed with individuals that have a background that can jump into this full steam. So if you're out there in the community and you have an interest, you have a construction background, you have a design, you have a finance background. If you're interested in helping the community, please put your name forth, because I know volunteers can be hard to come by, but if you feel you have experience, please volunteer and try to serve this community because it'll be really, really important moving forward. So thank you.
Okay, looks like we are ready to open it up to the public for questions, and we've got our experts here to answer the best we can. Again, please do state your name just for clarification.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'd like to jump in the beginning of present to speak just to address something that was, oh, I'm sorry. To address Bill's comment earlier on notification. Unfortunately, the town relied a lot on Facebook, which is a Meta product for a lot of our communication in the town. For some reason, Meta erased the town information page. And we've been working to get it restored, but after 2 weeks, we haven't heard from them. So we'll be rebuilding it. So hopefully we'll be able to communicate better in the future. Well, there was previous notices as well under agendas and board stuff. But, and I believe there was an email.
I got the email.
Yeah, so, you know, we try any number of ways of communicating. It's just that there's no real good way yet. We're also trying to build a program through Everbridge to get more information out to people. I've been working on it for 2 years, and I believe Eric worked on it for 4 years prior to me, and we're running into any number of obstacles. So we're trying to.
Communication is definitely. All right. Yes. Go ahead and raise your hand from the public if you have a question or comment. This is super fun.
Lori September, Turnpike Road. One of my concerns, I mean, obviously it'd be great if we could do the project that, costs less, because that's a real concern for taxpayers. But, my concern is if we rebuild here, that would be a major disrupt. What would we do with the students? I mean, I know this is a little ahead of time, but I was a substitute teacher at Annie Benton School during the time that Mansfield Elementary School was being built. And they had to, because of delays in the project, they had to divide up the kids and divide them up between the two elementary schools that were left after they tore down the one where the new school was going. And they were able to do it. It was major disruption. It was, a lot of adjusting, but we don't have that space here. So, I'm sure it would take more than a summer to build a school. If we're tearing down, what do we do with our education during that time? And so I think a new school would be better, except of course I don't like the fact that it's higher, but I just think that whole disruption, as Jim mentioned, would be a nightmare, especially if you're tearing down and rebuilding here. I don't even know how we would do that, but maybe you have some thoughts on that. I don't know. Thank you.
Ms. Kamalik does have some phasing plans. Maybe you could share a little bit about you. And of course, that information is all available online.
Good evening. I just want to mention that, you're really fortunate to get this increased reimbursement. I mean, I've been doing this for 35 years in Connecticut, and this is one of the few that have come about, and this has been so positive in terms of the impact on the community. So thank you so much for having, pushed this through the committees. The answer to your question is, it is going to be difficult because we have a phasing plan and we developed it under various scenarios. And what would happen is you would build an addition and then the kids would move around, and there was a very detailed phasing plan. What it does is it adds time to the construction process, and it does impact education. No matter what, it will impact education. And so to understand that when you do a renovation project, especially a project like this, which would be a renovation, where updating the entire building systems for the entire existing building and then integrating it with the new building, the impact is there. And that also has an impact on the cost of the project, because time is money in school construction. So just so that you know, we've done the preliminary evaluations, and as you mentioned earlier, Jack mentioned it, that it's actually going to be more expensive to renovate the building than it would be to build a new building. In fact, that will give you an advantage in terms of going to the full reimbursement pages. If the state sees that you're going to spend more money on renovating a building versus building a new building, first of all, they're going to question the FCP of that, but ultimately they're also going to say, we'll give you that additional 10% that you get deducted on a new building.
Ms. Minor?
Yes. I'm just brainstorming. Thank you for everyone that showed up tonight. Really appreciate it and all your hard work. Brainstorming from just what people are saying about a new building or an addition and bringing this up to code. The way is it used to be Manchester Community College. The way they got around that is they built another building right next to it, like a smaller building. Maybe that would take care of the pre-K through 3rd or 4th grade. You go one door and the distance is shorter than the meter Jeff, in the next building. The next level, they actually have a little bridge that has glass for the grade. Would that be a consideration of possibly save money because you wouldn't have to use up the code?
There has been discussion about swing space and also how we could do wings and move children.
Not a wing, a separate building. So you wouldn't have
Oh, that's it.
but it'd be right next to the building, and you could just go out one door and into the other one.
I'm going to pass it to Mr. Malik. I'm sure he can answer.
Yeah, there's many ways that you can try to circumvent the process, but
So
ultimately
they're bringing it up to code.
bringing it up to code. And ultimately, what you should be considerate, concerned about is the code. The code's there for a reason. You have students in here, they need to be in a building that's safe. And to say, is there any work that you do in this building, if you're trying to not bring it up to code and repairs from mechanical systems, the HVAC, air quality, all of that will then be jeopardized in terms of reimbursement, because all you would do is get the addition potentially as an eligible cost.
Yeah, so the state won't, you would be basically bringing this building up to code even slowly would be 100% on the taxpayer side, with the exception of like the roof grant. The HVAC grant is gone. The safety grant is gone. So for instance, you have a whole lot of single pane windows, right? Just to bring those windows up to date, that would be all in order. There's no reimbursement from that from the state. The state will not pay you to do maintenance on the buildings. So you would get the reimbursement for the small piece that you're doing, but I do think you'd have to have a lot of duplication because it's a pre-K through 3 school. You have to have the egress doors, you'd have to have the nurses station, you'd have to have a bunch of stuff there that you also would have to have here. So you'd have to look at that, weigh out all of those things, but then anything that would happen in this building would not get that reimbursement. So
we still need the HVAC system, even though we're not doing the grant thing?
well, if your HVAC isn't up to code, and like I said, the windows, I know for a fact the windows aren't, and the window, I would not even recommend doing an HVAC upgrade here if you have those windows. Because it doesn't matter, if you do an HVAC upgrade, you have better heat and air conditioning, you're blowing it out a single pane window, that's how old, right? So you have to look at all of the projects that would need to be done to bring all up to code. And then the cost of that on the taxpayer's dollar, and then the sequence so that you would do it and how you would be able to finance that. So, something you could look at, but.
Yeah, I don't see how any of this lower taxes, which is what, I mean, if you look at the last round of budgets, that's what people lower it.
I agree, but that's, again, that's a Willington decision. We just brought you forward, the best way that we could get.
Nick Tello, Myrtle Road. I won't go through all 6 points I have, I'll stick to 2 for now. First, because I'm not gonna speak in President Speak, thank you for coming and the board members. As far as disruption experience, I went to Pilgrim High School in Tollgate in Warwick, Rhode Island. In Pilgrim, we had some repairs being done, and what they did then was brought in pods, and we were completely safe. And kids were still successful. This disruption, kids could get overcome. Kids are much tougher than we expect. Pre-K through pre-K confusion. So my son went to center for I think 6 months or something. He only got in because he was behind on speech. And my understanding was pre-K you can only get in if you're special education. And I think some people in the last referendum thought pre-K like you could just straight up just go. And I tried to explain to people, no, you have to basically be special needs to get in, maybe speech or whatever it is, and give it clarification that the pre-K is for special needs. So people know, like, the pre-K is not just like, hey, my kid's good, he's just gonna go or she's gonna go. Is that correct?
So the 4-year-old program is a lottery system still, and it's a 50-50 program. So it's a model program where 50% are identified with special education needs, and 50% are considered to be models. And we turn away a lot of students.
Preference is given to the special needs first and then.
But it has to be 50-50.
Oh, it has to be 50-50,
It's
okay.
basically a peer model.
Okay.
It's a peer model, so, I know, again, we have it in Tallinn,
Sure.
it's, you wanna have the mirror experience with special ed kids and neurotypical kids. So, any expansion on that, I would assume you would probably stick with. That's you guys. That's you guys. But it's an option, right? So.
And then just one more before going to other ones, but just one more. So there's scuttlebutt last time about the fire, because we can't ignore the fire department situation going on, right? And I know there was scuttlebutt last time of that maybe they tag on to a bond, right? And would that impact anything with reimbursement, or what is the impact if that happens?
That there's no special reimbursement. I'll be honest with you, I managed to get $1 million, this is before you came on, I know it was $1 million for the Tallinn Fire Department bond. And it took us forever to get it. I'll be 100% honest, the governor hates giving monies for fire departments. But like it was like tooth and nail fighting, begging, borrowing, calling the governor all the time to get the $1 million.
Okay.
So that's a totally different project. That would be bonded by the town, you know.
Okay. So it's not gonna be the same.
No, well, you could do the same bond, but you're not going to get reimbursed for it. Right. So if you lumped it together and took all the money out at the same time, that's a town decision to do, but you'd only get reimbursement.
Judy Fleet, Nancy Bertrand. I'd like to piggyback on what you said, Mr. Marshall, on the composition of the.
I'm sorry, Judy, could you just speak up, or we'll be happy to give you your.
I'll stand up.
Oh, great, thank you.
So Judy Creek, 19 Birchmore Lane. I'd like to piggyback off what Mr. Marshall said about the composition of the building committee. And I think we would have more success if we had people with the right experience on their committee, and I agree. With not looking at an appointment system, but looking at a volunteer system, could the Board of Selectmen identify what type of volunteers they are needing and looking for? A project manager, somebody with construction experience, somebody with finance experience, and come up with a title and maybe 3 bullets of need you to have experience for this, and then look for volunteers from the community so that we get the right people with the right experience that can hit the ground running and don't have a lot of months of onboarding to get to where they need to go. That's my offer of consideration. Thanks.
Donna Cook, 77 Common Road. First of all, thank you everybody for all the time and effort you've put into this, and especially Jeff and Tammy. So one of my concerns, and maybe it's left over from the last round, and Ann did bring it up, is the last time the ed specs indicated that this particular property was not conducive to providing for the needs of the kids. I believe it had something to do with outdoor space, if I'm not mistaken. So unless something's changed in the design, that problem still exists. The other thing is, we were told that the piece of property selected for the new building, new site, was the only piece in town that was appropriate for a new building in the town. That piece of property is not going to be used, as my understanding. So I don't understand how a new building can go on this site if it's not going to be what the kids need, and how a new building can go someplace else if that was the only piece of property that was appropriate.
You are correct, there's on this particular property, there are some images Russ, you put together that document about the fields overlapping. Was that your work? Right, so that's available. Did you want to speak on that at all?
So there are guidelines for educational, we are purchasing the property for a middle school or an elementary school, any school. And those are guidelines, because you'll see schools throughout the state wherever there isn't adequate property, people adjust to it. In our case here, yes, you do have some limitations and you would have some overlapping fields, but you also have to have smaller enrollment. So, you know, in terms of those guidelines, they're based on X number of square foot per school type plus 1 acre per student. So you get close to that number on the hall site. But it doesn't meet all the criteria, but it's not a requirement, it's a guideline.
Brianna, could I comment on the previous land?
That was very, go ahead.
Is that appropriate?
Go ahead, we'll get to you, Mr. Tian, just one moment, please.
Mike McCoo, Clover Springs. For a portion of the time of the old school building committee, I was chairman, and I just wanted to help answer some of the comment that Donna made about the land. And the Youngerman property, which I believe you were referring to, which was purchased previously, which was There was never any declaration that that was the only piece of property. It was the recommended piece of property. It was not the only piece of property.
All right, back to you, Mr. Tian. Oh.
Hi, John Tian, Eldridge Mills Road. First of all, thank you to everybody for being here. This is important, and it's really good to see turnout of citizens as well as all the boards. I just wanted to make a couple of points about this property right here, Hall School. Several times people tonight have raised questions about what happens if we stop using this as a school. Do we have to return it to the Hall Family Foundation in some kind of condition? Do we have a condition sheet on it or anything along those lines? We don't. If you look at the deed for this piece of property, there's a caveat in there that says if we don't use it as a school, it reverts to the control of the Hall Family Foundation. There is no mention of any condition of any buildings or anything else. We would owe them a debt of gratitude at this point. And certainly we do owe them a debt of gratitude, and perhaps we should do something to turn the building into something that they could use, or perhaps they would want to turn something into that they would use. But I think asking questions and not coming up with the answer is not going to be conducive to getting us into a referendum by June of next year. We need answers, not questions. And the question here is, if we stop using this place as a school, what happens to it? The Hall Family Foundation takes it over. We give them the keys. That's really the end of the story on that. Yet, like I said, we may owe them a debt of gratitude, but that's really all that we owe them at this point. I really think that we need to get to solutions on these things. People asking questions is great. Come with an answer for your question as well. That's even better. Thank you.
Thank you. Thinking about what to do with Center and Hall, if we chose to build new at another site, was in fact on the charge of the last school building committee, if I recall. And it is also something that the Board of Education has talked about. We acknowledge that's a big deal. It's very important to the townspeople. It's important to us. We are working on a collection of questions to bring to the Hall Foundation representatives, and Mr. Stevens has actually already started having communication back and forth with them to begin that conversation, because we certainly respect the Hall Foundation, and the building, this beautiful building, they've let us use for so many years, and we want to, of course, return the respect back to them, and it is important. It is an important thing. So suggestions and questions about that certainly are welcome, of course, and something we're kind of already swirling around. Was there anybody else up there who had a question?
Jamie Koprick, 79 Common Road. I think like what just happened here with Mrs. Cook and the differencing of opinions. I followed along pretty closely with that last school building committee as a parent of 2 kids in town, and it was, whether on purpose or intentionally or not, very much presented, in my opinion, as that was the only land that was suitable for this building. And I think that is just going to prove the point that hopefully that all these words can work together and really just have a centralized information system where people are commenting different things, so that all the information is black and white, clear as crystal. There's no references, there's no favoritism. I love Mr. Tanaka's idea, and I think it stemmed from you, Tammy, that to make it very fair and bipartisan, right? So make it bipartisan, I mean. So then you have one Democrat, one Republican, the public works person. It's my understanding that the people who apply for that will be interviewed by those people, and it will have to be ultimately a decision for all of them together. And I do think we have a lot of very brilliant people in this town, a lot of committed people that do want to help, maybe just don't know how. And hopefully people will step up. But I think the confusion was half the battle last time. It caused a huge point of contention between a lot of people, and I don't think people knew what was true, what wasn't true, and it just kind of put a bad taste in everybody's mouth. So my opinion is just to move forward and try to have centralized information that everybody can share, so that we're all getting the same information. Thank you.
Thank you for making that point. I think that is something that we definitely learned the last round. Yes. So maybe we can work together as a unified team to be sure that things are clear, things are transparent, we're all on the same page. That's very important. I agree. Is there anybody else out there who wanted to comment or ask a question? That was a great time. Yes, sir. Back to you.
Excellence, River Road. One of the things that came up for the last referendum is there was only one option. This is it, yes or no. And I think it's important that we have multiple options, And there are gonna be compromises for each one. Cost, educational spec, location, community impact, there'll be that. So we as voters need to decide which one of those is acceptable from all those different standpoints and present those options to them. I think that the options that we were given on this is it. This is the only one option. We don't have sufficient data on that site either because we couldn't get data. We couldn't collect water data. We couldn't get for percolation for septic. There were all these other things. We didn't have data to make a good decision. Traffic study, road access in and out for buses. That data wasn't there. How can you make a good decision when you don't have that information? So I think we need to fix that. So if we're looking at a new site, we have that data. Because can you get buses in that by Hilltop? No. 2 buses coming? No. I measured it. No. So the road has to be wide. Those decisions, that needs to be part of the decision making. So we have that data so we can say, hey, this is a realistic thing, the impact is going to happen. And those options then need to be presented to the voters. We can decide which compromises are acceptable.
Sounds like you're in favor of Tammy's suggestion of asking first, should we do a project, yes or no, and then from there proceed. Is that what you're getting at? Yeah.
Which option? If you have 2 options, you're gonna get your yes and no right off the bat. If it's no, then it's no, right? That's what wins. If it's yes, then those who vote yes, which option would you like to have? And then it's truly the town deciding how they want to move forward with this. And it's not, like you said, it's not, here's your option, love it, hate it, right? Like, let the town decide.
So I want to also comment that we have an opportunity as a town to use this reimbursement to lower our operating costs significantly. When we design the building, design for low maintenance, low operating costs. Don't design something that's, pretty and, and quick, but it's going to cost us $100,000 more a year to run. That's not a good decision. We should use this opportunity to make the building meet our educational specs, community needs, as well as, operating costs. And does that mean making some things that are a little bit more expensive? Yes, but initially, we're going to get that money reimbursed to cover that, and we'll have our lower operating costs long term, and we'll have good savings. So, thank you.
Also in regards to looking at land, the land use office is in the works in collaboration with Mr. Stevens of looking for properties that fit our parameters and that might be possible looking at. It's very preliminary, but something that the Board of Education is trying to do is to hit the ground running, try to get a little bit of the behind the scenes work done prior to the school building committee, so we can sort of hand them some things, some drafts, some suggestions, some little work that we've been able to do so far, just to send it your way. You can use that as you build your own knowledge and your own information. So having land use take a look at some space is something that's going on. And in the concluding report from the last school building committee, there should be included in that a rubric of looking at different pieces of land, if I remember. And it had to do with looking at electrical. That should be available somewhere. I can't tell you at this particular moment where you might find it, but it's out there somewhere. So maybe take a look at that rubric. That's something that you could do to help. Look and see if those categories are ones that you find important. Think about what thing, especially if you have experience, what's really important? What do we need to make sure it has before we say yes or no to a piece of property as we're going forward? So that's another way people could help if you're really into looking at land and thinking about those things. Maybe that's the way for you to help along with that too. Sure.
Can I just make a quick follow-up point to that? The other thing to be cognizant of as we go through this, we want to dump as much of the design. Sorry.
Another thing we want to be cognizant of as a community is being able to dump as much of that upfront cost for that due diligence and design post-referendum to make it eligible for the reimbursement. There's a certain degree, identifying potential properties is great. That can be done in advance of any referendum to make sure that a new school, new site is a viable project. Has the potential to be a very viable project. The actual selection of a site can be developed in advance through whatever consultants were onboarded to advance an ultimate project. And I'm sure early budget estimates are going to capture and site acquisition costs and site development contingencies that are appropriate for the scope and scale of whatever the project ultimately becomes. So we just have to tread that line of making sure that, one, there may not be the time to get traffic studies and all of that done in advance on multiple properties. We also don't want to pay for it in full when we can kind of roll that into future reimbursement. Just something to be considered. But yes, the goal is to get as much information out as possible at as little cost to the town as possible, because that's obviously an important metric.
Brianna, you have Wilson McKinnon online.
I see, I promised Ms. Cunningham a moment and then we can go away. Thank you. Okay.
Michelle Cunningham, 41 Lisbon Road. I wanted to reiterate something that Representative Nuccio said earlier about how changeable the legislature can be. And we have a window of opportunity for the next 9 months to get something through. We all pay our state taxes and they support the building schools every place else. We haven't gotten it back in Willington in years. We haven't gotten our fair share of school building money in a really long time. It's time for us to get our fair share back in the taxes that we pay. And if we don't get it done in this window, we are very likely to get a lower rate than we would otherwise get. We have a very short window to look at this, and it's going to require us to work together. I recognize that all of us have political leanings. There's been a lot of coded messages tonight about who's for what or what for who. That's not what this is about. This is about our kids. We have to provide an education. We have to provide buildings. What's the best way to do it? So let's bring our best ideas to the table and come with some solutions about what's the best way to do something we have to do anyway with the money we're owed back to us for never having used it in years. And let's work together on something, because I think that if we don't do this before the end of June, we will pay more. Even though we have some of that rate, I think the discussion about the changes that the legislature is proposing that will come into effect will cost us a lot more in July. So don't drag your feet. And if you do drag your feet, you're costing us money. If you drag your feet, it's your fault if it costs us more money in July.
Yes, we've got Ms. McKinnon there with us on the line.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep. Hi.
Okay. Yes. So I just wanted to note too that I think it's important that people don't realize that the schools, if it's a school used as a school, there's more requirements and more specifications that it needs in order for it to be used as a school. So if we are not using Hall School anymore, it definitely probably is perfect in the way it sits, because it's not, wouldn't be being used as a school. So I know I learned that years ago when I was involved on the Board of Ed, that I think not a lot of people realize that, you know, in order for it to be used as school, there's, you know, a lot of requirements that it, and educational standards, health and safety stuff that it needs. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Mr. Blessington online. Victor?
John Blessington, 29 Mason Road. I just wanted to talk about affordability here. I think 6 years ago, we had a report from an architectural firm on the options that we had to build a new school or repair old schools. And they were trying to push to build a brand new school for $28 million. So we formed a school building committee, and it took them a couple of years, and they finally reported out, and they were ready to build this brand new school for $46 million. It took a couple of years for them to bring it to referendum, in large part because of controversy over finding the spot for the new school, but they finally brought it to referendum for to build a new school for $65 million. And that referendum failed, and now we're talking about a new school, which I think is probably supposed to be around $90 million. Now I know we're living in inflationary times, but that's more than triple the cost in 6 years. That's 50% a year inflation. I'm finding that a little bit questionable. I believe the first $28 million the state was going to reimburse us at a rate of 50%, which would have left the taxpayer here liable for $14 million. Now we're up to, let's call it 80%, which means we'd be at $20 million, or 20% for the taxpayer would be of $90 million, that would be 18 million. So that would be a big increase there. And we are a town of 5,500 people, and it doesn't look like we're growing any much bigger in the near future. And we have the fire departments want a lot of money, the senior center wants a lot of money, the library wants a lot of money. So we're going to have to take that into account too. We can run out of money even if the state is reimbursing us. So we have to take that into account. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lori Semmelbaum, in the discussion of having a vote of whether to do the project or not, and then later deciding what it should be, I think we very clearly have to have an idea of the cost when we ask that question, if that's how we're going to do it, because Willington taxpayers are not going to say yes to some thing, without knowing what it is, how much it's going to cost. So I think it's difficult to say, do we want the project or no, without being able to say the project is this and it's going to cost this much. So I just think that's a concern about, saying whether we want a project or not first. Thank you.
Yeah, I brought that up. If we do math problem, we do 4 options. Option 1 costs 60, option 2 costs 40, option 3 costs 20. I don't know. No could very well win. The majority of people want something. So we have to have first, do you want a project to happen? Yes or no? Then here's the 3 options for the path forward. Here's the costs. So
On the same
vote?
On the same ballot.
on the same ballot.
Oh, okay, all right. 'Cause that's my concern, is that people aren't going to say yes to the project without some. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Can I refer you down to Mr. Malik? Rusty, could you share with everyone how you come up with the figures in your what is it called, options? Does that, you use how things cost now? Go ahead. You know what I mean.
So at this stage in the game, because it's at a conceptual design, schematic design level, as you've seen, we developed floor plans based on the educational specifications. And then there's a lot of historic data that's available. So we use the most current projects that have been bid. In our case, we've used projects that were bid 6 months ago, 3 months ago. And then we have ongoing projects that we're working with construction managers on, and they're doing estimates on those projects. So we factor all of that in to come up with a number based on the latest systems and what the costs are for construction projects. So that's how these project budgets are developed. And then we include in there escalation, and usually it's 3 to 5% escalation for every year that if you delay. There's contingencies in there as well for both design, because there are a lot of unknowns at this point in the process. So you try to have the contingencies there, and just know that contingencies there so you don't run out of money. But if you don't use the money that's there for contingency, that can just go back to the system. You don't have to bond that. So that's how we develop the budgets.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm offering just the idea that going ahead, what Ken said, saying yes or no to move forward.
The next line is, if this project moves forward, which one do you want to choose, and give them the options under that. That way it captures everything without having to do 2 referendums.
Hi, Tammy and Jeff, thank you for coming out today. A lot's been,
Just state your name.
oh, I'm sorry, Todd Bissonette, 41 Cosgrove Road. Thank you for coming today. A lot's been thrown on the table. We've been here before. We've been here with the gun range. We've been here with the box store. We've been here with the marijuana store. There's always a fight. When does it end? And I haven't heard yet of anybody saying, what's it gonna cost the individual taxpayer? Mr. Blessington, I wish I could remember his numbers. He put it out there perfectly. That once it's at 20 million, now it's at 90 million, but you're still paying out of your pocket, 20 million. It doesn't matter. In town here, I forget what the numbers are, we're down in numbers. As far as the kids' education, that's a yes. Whatever benefits the town, that's a good thing to do. It's good for everybody, it's good for the town, it's good for the children. I have kids, I have grandchildren. But the bottom line is, what is the cost? How is it going to affect people? We have now, there's 71 special needs students in town. Takes a lot of money to run it. That comes at a cost. We're down in numbers. Students are going down. We were at in what's it, 2008, 7,000 students. We're down to 300 and something now. 600 used to be, okay. My numbers aren't there and I apologize. Unprepared. Okay. But where does it go? You know, and I'm indifferent to a new school, old school, burn it down, do whatever you gotta do. But as long as something is put in play where everybody benefits, we have, now I think it's 41% of our families in town are eligible for food programs.
48% of your families here are Alice families.
Well, you're
17%
making my
poverty.
point. You don't have to go even farther, but thank you.
Yes.
But if they can't afford a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for their kids, how can they afford a tax increase? What's it gonna cost that family? Where it's at. We just got slammed with revaluations. We all went up anywhere from 7 to 20%. We just got, every year it's going up. There's gotta be a ceiling somewhere.
Listen, I hear you. And as I said, as we both said in the beginning, no, we don't vote in Willington.
Right.
This is ultimately the town of Willington's decision. What we did, what I did, what we've worked on, what we're bringing to you is an opportunity to have a higher reimbursement rate, should you decide you want to go down this path. This has an expiration date. If you guys don't decide you want to do it, it goes away. There's no harm, right? That's why both of us have said very clearly to every person that we have talked to, this is ultimately the town of Willington's decision to make. All I could do was get you the absolute best rate that I could manage to finagle half an hour before the bill hit the floor. The best opportunity to have it at the least cost. If you guys decide you don't want to do it or you can't afford it, I wholeheartedly respect your vote. That is up to you. As far as how much it's going to cost the taxpayers, that's something that should be decided with the school board. You know, it should come from, you know, the CIP, the Board of Finance. What's it going to look like if you use that 5 million? If you offset it, what's the impact to the taxpayer? That's all information. Everybody but me and Jeff up here owes you guys, and then you make that decision. We stand by it. If you guys don't capitalize on it,
My
job is to do it for you anyway.
My whole point of my dissertation, I failed to say it, with making the options of a new school, tear it down, a new plot plan, there should come with some type of a figure,
Yeah, I agree with
what the taxpayers can expect. How is it gonna affect them? That's my whole point.
Yep.
It'd probably been easier to say that at the beginning.
I get it, and I would honestly, I would expect that would be part of your referendum, right? I know in Tallinn with us, it was. We knew how much the school was gonna cost. We knew how much we were on the, you know, what we were on the hook for, and that's what we voted on. I would expect whatever projects, those 2 projects, in my mind, your ballot says yes, no. If yes, which one? Here's the impact.
Well,
This one
not,
costs 64, the town impact is this is what it means, you know, like, that would all be part of your reference.
well, not just the town, individual taxpayers, what you can expect.
The problem is that by using a mill rate, each individual taxpayer pays a different amount because of the amount of land they own. We're required by the state to live on property tax, and if you have no property, then it's gonna be of no impact. It doesn't matter how much this will cost. If you don't own anything, it's not gonna impact. If you do own land, like some of us, it's gonna impact you a lot. So we'd have to work out a number for each individual taxpayer, and I don't think that would be possible.
I think you'd probably put a mill
We
rate.
could
You'd
put
put
out
a mill
a,
rate, like,
we
you
could
would
put out a
know
mill
what's
rate and
right.
say, this would be the mill rate jump.
Yeah.
If you pay so much.
Oh, yeah, I think we're saying the
Like
same
option
thing.
1 would be 0.5 mils, option 2 would be 1.2 mils, you know, like
Yeah.
that in your dollar, and then you would be able to look at that. And say,
Calculate it out.
Right.
That's fair, that's fair.
That's kind of what I would assume it would be. You
Okay.
would have all that information in front of you, when you should make an educated decision based off of that information.
That's how most towns would calculate. My town instructs, it's how we do it for big projects.
Okay.
This is what the mill rate might be for an increase, and you can calculate it based upon what 1 mil actually.
That's fair. They give you the information, give you ballpark. Thank you so much.
You're very.
We also have some people who are very interested and really love math here in town. And some of them really love making their spreadsheets and their charts. Maybe someone sitting here. So if
And
you wanted to
confusing
get
people.
like particular to your situation, I'm sure they would be happy to.
I wouldn't be happy sitting next to him, would I? What are you talking about?
People in here, maybe really low numbers.
Excel is a wonderful tool. It's my favorite. I love
People
it.
could copy.
I agree.
All right, we're gonna go online, we'll come back. All right, so we've got Mr. Foster online. Are you there, Mike?
Yeah, I'm here. Mike Foster, 19 Birch Meadow Lane. So 2 things. More just kind of a caveats to, we pose the question, do we do this project? We need to identify that, do we do this project and leverage the nearly 80%? So it makes sure that's clear out there that's, we're not doing this all on our own dime. And 2, identify that the bond, we don't pay that all back in 1 year. It's over a certain length of time, and how long that amortization would be. So that's things that should be cleared out for when we put this out there to the voters. That's all.
Thanks for highlighting those for us. Back to you, Mr. Teller.
Nick Teller, Road, just from a mindset standpoint, I think saying that some people will not be impacted because they don't own land is a bad mindset to have. Because I know people in town that have been renting for 17 years and their rents go up because taxes go up. So the mindset of it doesn't impact everybody is, I think we just need to correct that. It impacts everybody, even if you're a renter.
Thank you, that's good. See a hand back there, hi.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
back.
Salonis, River Road. Just want to say about the mill rates and stuff like that we put up there. We need to have data in more than just one single data point. Because we're looking at aggregate, like what's a 3-year impact, what's a 5-year impact, what's a 10-year impact. Because at some point we'll start seeing the advantages of consolidation in operating costs, and it's balanced against bonding. We'll start seeing that trade-off. When do you start going to win? When is the win point? How are we going to see this? How is it going to impact? And that should help make the decision for voters. Just a single data point with no rates going to be this at this time next year isn't the full picture.
Thanks. Anybody else in the room? Oh, sir.
I'll be real quick. I'm not looking to rush anybody. I know folks have mentioned about wanting to have certain timeframes. Just keep in mind that there is, I guess, a deadline, so to speak, and it's not as if that if you're coming up close to the deadline that somehow the legislature, the legislative leaders will just say, sure, we'll give people. If it goes, it's not a guarantee you can get it back or you can extend the offer. Having that time frame is really good, that's been built into the law. But I always like to remind folks, and I've done this for many times in my own town, that we undergo projects and say this is what we could take advantage of X, Y, and Z. There's a certain amount of time that you have to decide. And so again, I don't want to rush you with the process. You guys will determine that process. It's been great hearing a lot about, what process people are thinking about moving forward, but just be mindful on the calendar. So, because it is a deadline. Sure, if you guys reach it, we can try to do what we can to extend. Not a guarantee at all, because the number one question that I'm almost certain that we will get is, well, you had the opportunity, what happened? Again, don't want to rush you, but just be mindful of that date, because time does move fast, as you know, especially when you're having fun. And I know it was mentioned before about being mindful of the dates. I know you guys will be, but the dates are there.
Yes, sir.
Peter Latinchich, 97 Trask Road. I want to thank both Tammy and Jeff for their hard work in securing us this reimbursement. I think it's important to understand what we're applying that reimbursement to. What is the cost of the project, which Laurie and others have emphasized is important in Willington. That's the kind of town we are. And I don't see that. I attended the last Board of Ed meeting. I sat through the discussion of the ed spec for multiple hours. Zero discussion of cost. I look at your sheet tonight on feedback that you're asking for, educational programming checklist. Cost is not one of the things you're asking feedback on at all. That's concerning to me. Rusty's team, QA+M, presented the 3 choices that you're looking at now that conceivably could be the choices you present to the town in a referendum. They're online, and I'm told that those numbers are incorrect, that those costs have not been updated. So my question is, when will we know what the cost of each project is that is under consideration? And a corollary to that question, can you put in a placeholder for what happens to the 2 existing buildings? Because Willington is struggling now to maintain its existing buildings. We cannot have 2 surplus buildings sitting in town that also need to be maintained. Or we could be probably not in the favorable situation Tammy's town and Holland is in, but we could be like Stafford with Witt School, sitting there empty and now a brown site. So I'm asking when we will know the cost of the 3 potential projects, and can we put a placeholder in to see how that impacts those 3 choices for the existing buildings? Thank you so much.
Do you suppose that thinking about what should happen with the 2 buildings will be part of the charge for the next school building?
I would guess, yes. It wasn't the last one, so I would guess that it would be for the next one.
And Pete, I think you had a very good question there, and we would love to answer it. We are not hiding the answer from you. We don't know it either. So we haven't gotten that far. This is essentially the first meeting of this. I mean, the Board of Ed has been considering this because it largely impacts them the most, and probably Board of Finance the second most. But I've heard from a number of people that, including Senator Gordon, that we have a time frame here. And I think we've been emphasizing that from the beginning. We need to I want to say move our ass, but that would be unprofessional. We need to do something quickly, and I hope we can do that.
The answer is prior referendum. Because
yes,
right?
we need that first referendum just to get started. So we work on that, and we do need a bipartisan committee of experts to guide us through this, and I'm hoping this. You've been in the first selectman seat for like 3 days. You realize that this town runs on volunteer labor, and we're going to have to do that again.
The answers are attainable.
The answers are attainable, but
We're just not there.
we're just not there.
We need project cost first,
They'll be there before you go.
and then we can get there, with all of the next steps along the line, but it is a process, but we are unstable. So.
All right, I'm gonna try it to Mr. Christensen.
Yeah, so I just want to address the checklist. And so the reason for the checklist is because the Board of Education is trying to have as much community input and community feedback on this project as possible. In a short time frame, considering we met on Wednesday of last week, there's no possible way to put dollar numbers to all of those things, but all of those things have an associated cost. So what we were trying to do was gauge the temperature of the people who would be interested in this project who are here and see what parts of the project are more important. I know we had a board member who is very adamant about expanding pre-K because of how limited our pre-K system is now. That would be great to have, especially if you're building a building for the long term, but there is a cost associated with it. So we need to gauge the town's feeling on all this stuff. And that's really the point of the checklist, is just to get us some kind of direction with the aspects that we have, and whether they go up, they go down, they go sideways. It's at least something from the town that we can use to work on that decision.
Okay, Ms. Nellis.
Hello. I just wanted to say it's really great to see everyone here. This has actually been a very long time coming. I can remember back to, I think it was 2012, 13, maybe 15, when we first started talking about the unsustainable operating budget for it, and how that was impacting all of the other budgets in town, and trying to think about how we could fix that, and really trying to understand what the operating costs, if we were to go to one school, would be. It wasn't a serious discussion, I would say, back then. It took all up until 2023 or whenever that was. 2023 when we had the vote. It took a very long time to get to that point. I think for a lot of people, it seemed like it happened overnight, but those discussions and those problems were growing and growing and growing all of those years, and they are still growing. We have not solved anything since then. So it's really great to be here with this deal available to us. I mean, it's really ours to mess up at this point. We can't let that happen. We have to do something in the right direction here. And it seems like everything has fallen in our favor to be able to act. And the thing I would say is that we do want to understand the costs, and we need to understand the cost for the different options, but we also need to understand what the savings are going to be from an operating perspective in the short and long term, and the cost avoidance that we're going to have in the maintenance and in the operations and in the administration and all of those things. We really have to think through what's that going to be in 5 years and in 10 years, because the overall impact of doing something is going to hit us on all of those fronts, and we just have to think about it holistically like that. So, and then the only other thing I wanted to say is, with the bipartisan board, to try to also think about the unaffiliated people in town, which the majority of people are unaffiliated. They're not into this political stuff. They don't want to get involved in this stuff because it's political and because of how unpleasant these things can get. So I think trying to bring in actual professionals who are out there doing this kind of work and don't want to do the politics part of it would be a really good thing. So just think of those people too. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
And 23 Road. I think that you also have to consider the demographics of the town. 30% of the town's seniors. You've got a lot of people that are losing money on their 401ks and their retirement. We just went through a reevaluation, everybody's taxes went up, mill rate didn't really go down, which it normally does, and now you're talking about adding on to that. All these things people are looking at. There's only, like I said, there's only so much money out there. For some of these people, that a block of people that are on fixed income. What do you do with them? Raise their taxes, like put more on there, and then all of a sudden, they can't pay their taxes, they lose their homes. So all that has to come into consideration. And all the other things that we said are true. But at one point, where do we draw the line?
Thank you. Great question. Yes, back to you.
Last comment. Our current situation is not sustainable. We are running 2 schools, they are high maintenance schools, there are high dollars to maintain, and our student population is dwindling. We cannot continue doing this. We have to take some action. We have been given a gift by Tammy and Jeff in fighting for us to get this reimbursement rate. If we don't capitalize on it, we are going to have the same problem year after year after year after year after year after year after year until we go broke, because we can't do this. So either we jump on board and we capitalize on this reimbursement, or we wait and we have to pay more labor. That's it.
Thank you. All right. We're wrapping up a bit. Does anyone else want to?
This
Or
is
just
still
wait
Q
now?
and A. This is still Q and A.
Yes, sir. Oh, online, yes. Oh, let's call for online and in person as well.
I just have one question. It might be more to Bill. With the student population going down, one of the formulas, one of the items in the formula for reimbursement from the state is student population, amongst other things. Is this a concern on our radar right now? When it comes to funding either the older schools or going into a new school? We are seeing population.
So we have to do another enrollment study, because that's what the state will use for your reimbursement rate. And we're also going to have to sit down with the state and demonstrate what the town wants, the board wants in an ed spec, and show that this is what it takes to run a pre-K grade 3 building. We've already had some of those discussions to let them know that to run a pre-K grade 3 building, you need a larger gym than you would if you said elementary. And when you demonstrate those things, they understand it, and that would be the goal. You have to have those meetings, and they take that enrollment into consideration.
So there'll be a new study for population.
And that example of the gym has to do with scheduling and how you would probably have to have 2 classes at the same time with some sort of divider, not bigger, just fancier, but because of the scheduling with all those grade levels, I just wanted to clarify. Okay. Oh, yes, ma'am, back to you. No problem. Don't be sorry.
79 Common Road. I think to kind of mirror that sentiment about the lower enrollment, I think that's something that we should probably consider too when we're talking about or thinking about as citizens, adding on a third, pre-K 3 and pre-K 4, because if that counts as enrollment, that would also boost those numbers and probably help out offset some of that extra cost to put that in. And I honestly think as a working parent, like, I'm not insinuating that school is childcare by any means, but it is very helpful when there's, one daycare in town. And now they're not doing certain programs like taking aftercare for late children. It's really hard to manage that when you are a working family too. We work and we work out of town, and we drive 40 minutes. So we're boogieing on to get to pick up the kids. So I think that's another one of those kind of situations. Another thing I think, and Tammy kind of hinted on this too, is it's at some point just going to be a gamble. Like, what do we want to do? Because at some point, it's going to come down to like, is this risk we're taking that maybe there'll be lower enrollment, maybe there won't, maybe this will be higher taxes. Maybe people will want to move here if we have nicer schools. Maybe people won't want to leave if we have nicer schools. I mean, I know when you're a parent and you first move to this town and they're doing water tests, you're kind of like, what did I do, right? And it's just, I don't know, when you hear about all these building repairs and then you wonder, okay, the wall was leaking and now there's asbestos under the rug, and it's concerning as a parent to know that your children could potentially be around this stuff and nobody knows that. So, and then one last comment, I also worry that if we start messing with this building, the number that we're using might not be the actual number, because anybody who's done a home repair knows that you pull that wall down and there's another mess that was just covered up long ago. So I think that's, you know, again, going to my first point, something to consider, that if we do open to pre-K, I think it'd be very helpful for families. I think it would draw people into town here because you don't have to drive your kids to other towns for care, and it would also offset that cost. I think there's a lot of things to consider, and I think it's going to be great. I think we should just go for it. I think we should take a gamble.
Thanks, Jamie. In the ed specs as they stand right now, which were created by the former Board of Education before we had some new members join and others move on to other things, there is, it specifies 2 pre-K classrooms, and because they are half-day programs, that's 4 groups of preschool students. So we're doubling our numbers essentially. And it sounds to me, just based on our conversation, as Arthur said, we just had very, very recently, everyone seemed like they were on board with that and thinking that would be an appropriate number of preschool classrooms to have. And as the conversations come about the importance of childcare and the need for it, not only in our town, but our state and our country, so folks feel like they can go to work with their children, have a safe place to stay and learn and grow. We also kind of had a side conversation too about the possibility of considering further down the line, thinking about having a space where we could build on potentially more for an early childhood center type of a thing. So those things are kind of swirling around. We brought up a lot of really good points about those little ones, so thank you for that. I see we've got Mr. Foster back online again.
Yep, just a quick question, and it's really, forgive me if I missed it, if it was already stated, to leverage the nearly 80% by June, do we have to have a construction contract in hand, or is it just a commitment saying we're going to do this?
You have to have an approved project by the state of Connecticut. So you have to have decided which project you're putting in, or you have to have the application, I'm sorry, you have to have the application for the project in.
All right.
So once you decide which option you would go with, you apply, you put that application in, and then you're good.
So just for clarification, so by this coming June, application, that's what I think it says.
So the only caveat with this coming June is if the state of Connecticut goes forward and puts in a square footage amount.
I'm familiar with that.
Right.
So we don't have to have a approved project out of referendum by this June. If we do, we will pay less per square foot.
No, I think if you are concerned about the square foot cost, if the state says we're only gonna pay $200 per square foot, and your budget is coming in at $300 per square foot, you need an application put in. For that application, you know, they're going to be, you know, you would have pick which project you're gonna go forward. You put in the application at that point. Then you would be safe from the establishment of those square footage. So you technically have until 2027 to secure the funding, to have the project, to have the whole thing done. If you're worried about the square foot cost, you have to have an application in by June 30th, 2026.
Do we have to have an approved referendum in order to submit an application?
Not sure. Well, I don't think you could put forward an application if the town doesn't pick, right? Because then you're picking which project the town would do. So I would say, my opinion is yes, you would have to go to referendum, have the town decide which project they want to go forward with. You would submit that project for your application to get it in by, you don't have to start building right away, but you know, you could still be doing all the other specs and all that other stuff, but you would have that application in with whichever project you decided to do, if you decide to do it.
Can you shed some light on that, Rusty? Thank you.
Sam said it correct, but what the state is allowing, with your grant application, if you schedule a referendum, so let's say for the fall, they will allow you to wait till the fall for that, but all the rest of the application has to be completed and you have to submit some documentation paperwork showing that you actually have the referendum scheduled for the fall. But I advise you to do it one time. Thank you. That's
Yes, go ahead.
A question for Tammy and possibly Rusty. One of the frustrations in the last building committee process was this waiver issue, where it seems our Board of Ed was pursuing a project that exceeded what the state approved for our land because of all these various factors that they felt have to be in our estimate. Is that the case now? And would we go to referendum not knowing whether or not we would face that waiver height penalty that we faced the last time?
I can't tell you whether or not you're gonna go to referendum with that, that's not in my control, right, that's beyond me. We don't have a space waiver in the language that was put in. You would have to submit for whatever the square footage is and go through the process to attain a waiver at that point. If you do attain that waiver, it will be at the higher reimbursement rate. So that much I can tell you, but I can't tell you whether or not you'll have all of that beforehand. Not my circus.
So that would be part of the risk if we
No,
go
that's
forward.
part of what your building committee would do. And, you know, that's part of the spec, the application that you would put in and be looking at, that would all be part of that. So it would be part of your process. Good.
All right. Yeah. All right, great. Let's all take a nice deep breath. Thank you so much. All right, let's just take a moment to thank our guests this evening. We've got Mr. Malik and Mr. Lane from QA+M. Thank you, Senator Warren, and Representative Nuccio. Some risk on the table. We have some really big decisions to make. I hope that you all feel comforted knowing that we've got this excellent team on our side. I know that it helps me quite a bit too. Thank you to the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance members as well. You know, as some of you said, it's a great opportunity for us here to plan for Willington's future with an unprecedented collaborative approach. And this is the perfect time for us to come together for a common goal of helping Willington overall. And making it a wonderful place for everyone. Before we go on to present to speak, I just wanted to share a little bit about the Board of Education's next steps. Okay, thanks. Of course, increasing community engagement across all demographics. We do need help with that, as Mr. Clark said. It's difficult to reach out. Well, it's not difficult to reach out. It's difficult to get feedback sometimes. So if anybody has ideas, if you want to draw with those special glass markers on your car and drive around to let people know when meetings are. If you want to wear a t-shirt that has, certain topics on it, that would be great, because we really do need to encourage folks to participate. And so we're looking for other ways to do that. If you have suggestions, we'll take it. Something else the Board of Education plans to do is provide factual information with clarity and transparency. In the back of the room and soon online are the Willington BOE 2025 school project information sheet, just to give you a little bit of FAQ about what's been going on. There's also a document showing recent maintenance repairs, because you may be wondering, well, what is it costing us to keep things going? What kind of projects have we been doing? And that sort of document can help you answer some of those questions. Please make sure if you have questions or you hear some hearsay going about that maybe or may not be factual, go ahead and check with the people who know. We've got representatives, we've got helpers, we've got professionals on our side. Please do take the time to reach out to the people that you believe do know the correct information. We have all learned a lot about social media and how it can twist and turn things around. We don't have time for that. So let's stick to the facts and what we know. Go straight to the source, please. The Board of Education will soon request that the Board of Selectmen form a school building committee. And in the meantime, as I said, we are completing tasks to help support them once they're up and running. Working on an updated enrollment study is something that Mr. Stevens mentioned. We talked about a little bit of land use. That office has been helping and thinking about some spaces that might be available, being in touch with the Hall Foundation. Those are kind of things that we can sort of begin doing so we can hand it off to the SBC once they're up and going. And our priority, of course, is to listen to the citizens. So please do get involved. You can email anybody here anytime. Do please take that checklist of ed specs. That's really important to us. We feel the weight of making these decisions for everyone, and we certainly don't want to do it alone. It's very difficult to know what everybody wants if we are not told. So please help us because we want to do what's best for everybody. Please participate. And of course, come to our meetings, come to Present to Speak, ask your questions, and let's really try to work together in a timely fashion and do our due diligence as well along the way to make the best choices for us. Tammy, did you want to take a moment?
I did. I just, Rusty, correct me if I'm wrong, but in regard to the space waiver, if you put forward a project that is higher than the space and you ask for a space waiver and the state says no, I think you have two options at that point. You can decide to do it and not get the higher reimbursement rate, or you can decide to change your plan and not go involved with the space waiver. So, you know, if the state comes back and says you're 5,000 square feet too much, you can adjust your plan if you're not going to get the reimbursement on it, right, Rusty? Okay, so
That's a Board of Ed decision.
exactly, that's a decision that your school board would make. You know, if you don't get the waiver, then you make a smaller school.
So that was a decision for the group, school building committee.
That would be the school building committee, I would say, because they're going to come back and you're going to say, you know, you're not going to get the reimbursement on this. Then the building committee would have to then work with the designer and everybody else to figure out what is the plan forward to get the building within the size that you need.
Would we not have to adjust the ed specs also?
You would have to address the ed specs because it would have to bring it down. So that would be the work that the school board would do with your engineer, designer, everything else, and you guys to say, all right, we didn't get the waiver. We're not going to move forward with that piece. So what I'm saying is you have options, right? It's never all or nothing, right? So in this case, there's options. You would have that conversation with your school board.
Or maybe unlikely, you could decide to move forward if the taxpayers support it.
Well, that would be the thing, right?
Without the
Because
waiver.
at that point, like say it's 5,000 square feet over and it's gonna cost you, you know, 1.2 million for that, and you're asking for a waiver, and the state says, no, we're gonna give you that at the base because it's a new building of 54%. And you're only gonna get, you know, 500,000 for that, right? You can say, no, the town's not gonna pay the $5,000 for that. We don't want to, the 500,000, we don't want to assume that amount of money, so we want you to bring the ed specs into the 60,000 square feet that it has to be, right? That would be the decision. I would expect that your school board would have those conversations and would say back, we didn't get the waiver. The town's not willing to assume $500,000. We need to bring the ed specs in. Basically,
So what would happen is you would get, for the amount that you're eligible, you get the full reimbursement rate, so the 79.
Yep.
Anything over that, you would get nothing, you would get anything.
so that's the role I would think your school board would take. It's not a given, right? Just because you submit a plan and it's over, you know, hopefully we can get the space waiver if it's needed. If it's not, you have decisions to make. It's not locked in. That's my point. I just wanted to, you know, it hit me after I said it.
And not that we're.
It's getting late.
I understand.
Not
Not that we would, the Board of Education and our ed specs is certainly not asking for bonus space. We're not trying to build beautiful glass atriums. The space has to do with Mr. Stevens' example about the gym. We would not put on our ed spec or look for a certain square footage of a gymnasium because it looks nice and we happen to have a boys championship basketball team right now. The purpose would be, if you're going to have a pre-K through 8 school, it's very difficult to do scheduling with classes, particularly the unified arts like PE, music, etc. So you need that size of a gymnasium space so you can hold 2 classes simultaneously to fit in with the schedule. Think about how right now we have 2 music spaces in our 2 different schools. The music space that center even shares with art. You have 2 art spaces. We don't need all of that. Some of those things can come together, but we do have to consider our population and the scheduling. The cafeteria is another really great example. If you have a pre-K through 8 school, let's say the preschoolers are not eating lunch, but you have kindergarten through 8th graders all trying to fit in lunch waves, and the middle schools are trying to follow the middle school model and get their science and their social studies, and their math, language arts. Those get very complicated, all of those schedules. I've seen them before. They're very colorful and none of the rectangles line up whatsoever. But that is important to know because that goes with the space. Our classrooms are not giant because we want to have like the totally best awesome tables that are in comfortable chairs. The space has to do, please know that, the space has to do with the programs for the children, and oftentimes it has to do with the scheduling. So that's a good example of sometimes things get said, but we don't follow backtrack it. You know, we need a space waiver because our school's too big. Well, but why is our school too big? Not because we want to be fancy, because certain things have to work with their schedule, especially if we're going to do a pre-K through 8 school. I feel I can speak on that professionally and personally because that's where I work, is in a pre-K 8 school. I've been there a long time. So things like sharing the gym, I've seen it, I've lived it. Looking at a half a gymatorium or a cafetorium or a gymatorium, all of those things where you combine the cafeteria, the gym space, and the stage for an auditorium. I've seen those too. So you have to consider a lot of things. I'm sure you all feel the same way, probably a little overwhelmed. There's domino effects to things. There's so much swirling about to consider. It's a lot. So we really are going to have to try to be as clear and straightforward with each other as possible and do our best to collaborate and make sure we're on the same. Just kind of an example of that. We're about to start present to speak. Would you give me just 1 minute to announce that officially? Thank you. Okay, we are on agenda item 5, which is present to speak. We will follow our typical procedure for that. If you would like to do so, you can raise your hand in person or virtually. Please do state your name and your address, even if you've already said it a couple times this evening already. And then we'll go forward that. Is anyone interested in present to speak? Go ahead.
Well, unless they can engage, Nicholas Delamerto wrote, last time there was a penalty, I think it was 1,000 square foot was -% or something last time it was described. Is it now there's no penalty, or is it you just cover that cost? 'Cause I remember last time it was, I think we were at like 59%, and because we're over square footage, they started taking % away. That's how it was explained
From the
last.
reimbursement?
Yes.
You mean?
Yeah.
Well, I believe that.
Which I think went down to 40% or something last time. Sorry, like 50 something, it got down to 40%.
It's my understanding that's a set reimbursement rate, and as Rusty said, anything
So
past,
it's changed.
past the allotted square footage will be our responsibility. Is that correct?
At the end of the day, 52 is they average it out, so they're the full square footage, but at a reduced rate. So in essence, what it boils down to is the additional square footage is not being reversed, but the reality is they apply the entire square footage at a lower rate. So confusing, but it's a formula.
Yeah, it seems like the formula changed from last time.
It did. That's what Tammy did for us. At the very beginning, she was talking about putting the cart was in front of the horse. Now she wants to put the cart behind the horse. That's exactly what she was talking about.
That was a difficult thing to understand before. It did seem to make
Yeah,
sense. I
it
totally
didn't
agree.
make sense before.
So let's just be done with that. We'll put that in the box back there. You know. Okay, anyone else? Yes, Mr. Julius.
Ralph Tulis, 47 Village Hill Road. One of the concerns that I've heard tonight is people were unaware. And the one thing I'm not hearing from the people who are sitting on these boards, committees, and commissions is you have the ability as a resident of Willington to subscribe to every agenda and minutes produced by all boards, commissions, and committees. And I did get notice of this meeting last week via that method. I do not do social media. I want no part of social media. I would rather deal face to face.
That's why we talk about you behind your back.
I'm sure you all do, but I don't care because I don't participate. Anyway,
Remember the
it's true.
to follow, I forget, I am a part of that as well, but I don't remember how I went about it. Do you, or maybe Mr. Tanaka? How do folks go about?
There's a link on the town website to subscribe.
Okay.
That's what should be published.
They send it all to me anyways, whether I want it or not.
So on your vehicles, you put the special
Yes.
markers, you could write link and subscribe. Link and subscribe. Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah, and then you check off which one you want.
Right.
Or you can check all of them.
Yes.
You can go for all of them too.
Hey, I love a good day night at a town meeting, maybe other people would want to. Thank you, that's a good point. Anybody else? Has to speak, yes, sir? Yeah.
Mike McCoo, Clover Springs. Going back to some discussion before, created a frustration for me, not because of what was discussed, but why. And that is the misunderstandings about like the selection of the piece of land. That reminds me, the frustration is that we as a committee and we as even whether it was the town or whatever, failed to get that message out the right way. So the fact that we're even debating which piece of land was selected and was there only one piece of land, I'm not picking on those people. Those people pointed out that we did a bad job of communicating that, because no one should be debating that tonight. That information's been out for years, but it didn't get out the right way. It's not getting shared the right way. So one of the things in this ongoing process, and it's a challenge, I know, because we thought we were doing a good job, is every possible way we can get engagement is going to be really critical, because and actually that information about the choice of the parcels of land is still available online. It's still there to this day, right? And so anyone could look tonight when they get home and look at the rubric, the selection process, as you pointed out earlier, to select which pieces of land across the entire town were evaluated. So we've got to do a better job of making sure people have access to that and they know that it is available as we go forward, not historically so much, but as we go into this new process. Lot of good discussion about bipartisan, and I want to sort of throw a challenge to that. As the kids say, I want to level that up. Bipartisan isn't good enough. Our largest registered voting block in this town, if I understand correctly, is unaffiliated. We've got to be better than bipartisan. We've got to be all of Willington.
Tripartisan?
No, I don't think that's it. I think it's everybody. I think it's everybody. Like, we got to find a way to get not just Republican and Democratic buy-in. We've got to get unaffiliated people who, for example, may not be reached by their party because they're unaffiliated, right? So Democrats may communicate, Republicans may communicate. We got to get the communication to the unaffiliated people.
Can I address that for just a moment? That when I say bipartisan, I mean everybody.
I know. I'm not
I
challenging you. I'm saying we can do better.
I just want to point out that I failed to communicate what I meant by that. I don't mean just the Democrats and the Republicans. I mean, everybody in town needs to be involved in this project. But I didn't like the term nonpartisan, because this is, as we see here tonight, we see that this is unavoidably a political matter. So it's not nonpartisan.
Right.
And so I'm multi-partisan.
So
And partisan.
I'll tell you, when I talked to Pete about this, I think the way that I described what we did in Holland, which I thought was an excellent, is, as Peter said, we had the town council, we had a Democrat and a Republican, and then we had a town worker. But in our case, it was the person who handled our grants, right? They put out a thing to people in town and said, who wants to be on this committee, right? We didn't ask the people who came that were being interviewed. The bipartisanship was that they interviewed all of the people. And then they, the three, had to agree. So that way you weren't getting Republicans picking Republicans and Democrats picking Democrats,
yeah.
Right? It was, we had certain, like, somebody had mentioned, we had certain things. You had to have one parent with a kid in the school system. You had to have one teacher or retired teacher. We did not have elected officials, right? You had one representative from the town council, one from the Board of Ed. Everybody else was project management, design, construction people, landscaping people, like people who didn't have kids in the school. Like it was just, they applied. The bipartisanship was the selection of the people who were on that committee, and that they were not the people who are sitting around this table. It was truly reflective of the town. So after that, it didn't come down to, are you a Democrat, you're a Republican, are you unaffiliated? It was like, do you have, like, the only person I think that we had on there that was an actual elected person ended up, and I can tell you, they chose who the chair was and who the vice chair was. Nobody else chose that. The people who were on that committee decided it. We ended up having one elected person on there besides, like, you know, the representative from the town, that because he was our local business owner of landscaping. He also happened to be on the planning and zoning. But when it came to landscaping, this was this guy's life, right? So, and he pushed back on a lot of things and came up with a bunch of better options for landscaping in school. So I don't think the intent should be that the board is going to be bipartisan or just Republican and Democrat or unaffiliated. I think the selection process should be bipartisan. And everything else after that, your party doesn't matter. It comes down to, are you the best qualified to be on this, to push back, to look at, to go over this, to talk about whether or not you're doing geothermal or solar, or you want these bushes or that, or what about the emergency access? Like, so I think that would be how you get the most community engagement.
Right, and I wasn't trying to negate that at all. I was saying, in addition, we've got to make sure we've got to lasso around everyone in town and we're pulling them into
I
this.
don't think parties should be part of any part of it at that, other than, you know, your two first selectmen and your town person and them agreeing on who gets put on the board.
Right. All right, I think I had one other thing. Yes, so as some people pointed out already tonight, I think it's really critical that we as a town recognize the moment. The bipartisan effort to get us where we are, to get this opportunity to bring this taxpayer money that we're, as other people have said, we're putting the taxpayer money into this program. And it is assisting towns across the state in building schools. And so we, as our little 5,500 people in Willington, are helping pick any of the 168 other towns. We're helping them build their schools. If we come up with the right plan for Willington, we should then be proud of and aggressively pursuing getting some of our money back. And this is an opportunity to get even more of it than we would have normally gotten our money back because of the reimbursement rate. So that was what I wanted to say. We're putting it in, let's get it back. It will serve the town well. So that's it, thank you.
I just wanted to say, a follow-up to Ralph coming down the webpage and all the.
And here you am.
Okay, this is a follow-up to what Ralph said about the webpage and all the wonderful information we can get by signing up there. Phil, would you share with us exactly how to go to the education website? Everything about the previous building project is still, to this day, on that website. You can look at everything. And going forward, I'm sure that that will be one of the places that everything that the committee does will live. So Phil?
So you can go to the town page and click education, and when you click education, it'll go to the Willington Public Schools. When you hover over district information, it shows school building committee. All of the information is still there. Everything is archived. So if you want any of the old ed specs, any data that was collected, prices, it's all there.
And the minutes of all the meetings are still available.
And all the minutes are on the town side.
On the town side, yep.
Bill, when going forward, you need to be clear what the old contract is.
Yeah.
So that's a great question. We were actually talking about that today. We're creating a 2025 section, so it's going to be clear what was old and what's new.
Did you?
I was playing it in.
Oh, well done.
Thank
Would
you.
Jeff like some closing remarks too? Wow, she's just signing everything.
Yeah, happy to.
This is Kim.
No pressure. I'm happy to, I mean, again, for me to
Go ahead, sir.
Sure, I'll be real brief, thank you. Again, it's really up to you what you guys want to do. This is an opportunity, for you. I think it provides good information now to have an idea of what you could get for a reimbursement from the state, separate from if you go over space and things like that. But it's really, the ball's really in, with your court, because I'm telling lots of people in town, because I'm out in town a lot, is I don't vote in town, so I'm not the one that decides. Whatever you guys do decide, if you decide to move forward or not move forward, what you move forward with, you have a reimbursement rate. We're here to, happy to be of help as best as we can. But really, it's up to you. It's been great hearing from everybody. So, thank you.
Awesome. Okay, it is my understanding through Robert's rules that what we need to do is adjourn by board.
All right.
Would you like to begin?
I make a motion to adjourn.
A second. All in favor?
Aye.
Wow, that was amazing.
Nothing else.
They practiced.
Make a motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Unanimous.
Wow. All right, CIP?
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, the meeting's adjourned. Second. All in favor? Thank you all very much. We look forward to it.
9:30.
That-